Alright folks, so today we're going to be going over our first part of organizing and displaying categorical data. So the first thing we're going to go over here is just a little bit of a chart. So when we have data incoming, we can split it into two big categories. The first one of these is in numerical. The second one of these is in categorical. Numerical, as the name implies, it is made up of numbers, so things like age, weight, number of children, and shoe size. Categorical, in contradiction, is made up of words. So here we have numbers like 30 or 12 or 120, whatever you want. Category, it has to be things like words. So eye color, like blue is the data that someone would respond to a survey saying, what is your eye color? Each of these can be broken down further into subcategories. So we have ordinal and we have nomial categorical data. If we're looking at ordinal, the data has some sort of a hierarchy. So we are organizing it from a rating scale, maybe. Examples could be pain severity, satisfaction ranking, or a mood. We have nomial, which means there's no hierarchy. So it's a list of words, but there's not really any hierarchy. One doesn't have to come before the other. One is not more severe than the other. For example, eye colors, dog breed, and blood type. We could collect that data in a survey from somebody, but we don't necessarily have to organize it on a linear scale or a different type of scale. On the other side of this chart, back in our numerical subcategories, we have the two sections of continuous and discrete. When we're talking about continuous, there's infinite options. Continuous means the options keep going on forever. There's infinite ones. So age, we can say, goes on forever. It can be more and more specific. Like I am 21.76543 pieces of age, or weight, or blood pressure. Those are numbers that we get more and more specific as long as we analyze it more and more detailed. In discrete, we have finite options. So shoe size, we only have something like 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9. We have things like the number of children. You have to count them in wholes. You can't break that into smaller pieces. So discrete means there's finite options. Continuous means there is infinite options. So if we go through this information a little bit more on your guys' notes, I'd expect that we've printed this off. We're filling it in, taking down digitally, whatever works best for your learning style. So numeric and quantitative variables. It's a variable that takes numerical values. I can make that a little bit smaller, sorry. Values for which makes sense to find an average. These variables can either be continuous or discrete. That's our two main categories. If we have continuous variables, a numerical variable that can have an infinite number of values is a given interval. It measures with all real numbers. Examples are things like temperature, weight, etc. If we move on to discrete variables, there are a finite number of values that we can use to describe this. For example, it could be something like the number of dogs in a litter. It could be something like the number of goals scored in a game. It could be something like the number of siblings you have. If we break into our second grouping here, our categorical, it's a variable that places an individual into one of several groups or categories. Categorical, breaking them into categories, that's where the naming comes from. Categorical variables may have categories that are naturally ordered. For example, these are called ordinal, like this spot up here. Variables or have no natural order, which means they're non-normal. Variables. An ordinal variable is a categorical variable that has a natural ordering. of its possible values, but the distance between those values could be undefined. So we could say there's some sort of difference between a categories of excellent to good to fair and maybe even poor. All of these are undefined spacings between it, but there's gaps between each of those for these different categories. For a nomial variable, the types of categorical variable that describes a name, label, or category with no natural order. So the key part there is it just doesn't naturally have an order given to it, has no natural order. Things like that could be something like school subjects. If I ask what subjects you're taking, I might want that information. There's no natural order to that. Like I could say history doesn't come before or doesn't get ordered before biology. There's no natural order present there.